results of the clinical studies in a brief summary. These vaccines produce high antibody titers. They are at least commonly 10 times higher than in natural infections. One should note that a couple of these infections exist without measurable antibodies. Under those circumstances, they persist for prolonged periods of time, and no significant side effects have been observed in spite of some controversial reports in the literature. To my knowledge, none of these cases turn to be real, particularly as far as neurological symptoms are concerned. It was not linked to the HPV vaccination. Even death cases were reported, but autopsies also didn't provide any evidence that this was due to the vaccination. The only side effect which was reliably measured was in Australia, one case in 100,000 vaccine doses of a true allergy against the vaccine proteins. So it's a safe vaccine, and the interesting part is, again, like in the dog vaccination, that the protective effect for previously not exposed women comes close to 100% in the prevention of precursor lesions, not in the prevention of cancer yet. Clearly, it's a major problem, cervical cancer, for women in large parts of the developing world. The effective vaccination requires the production of affordable vaccines. In my opinion, the vaccines are still much too expensive. Optimally, vaccines that do not require cold chains, and preferentially non-invasive applications of the vaccines. Some of such concepts are indeed possible. One would be the use of capsomeres, as in the dog vaccine, which is a cheap alternative because it can be easily produced in bacteria and can be purified and air vaccinated. Another one would be to use other viral systems as vectors for the L1 protein. In this case, the inoculation of such a vectored system into the nasal cavity of animals has been only used in animal experimentation, leads to the production of virus-like particles in the nasal cavity and to a very prolonged antibody and T-cell response in these patients, which looks quite promising because these recombinant viruses are very heat resistant, and of course they do not require cold chains under those circumstances, and the nasal application would be clearly of great advantage. Now there are other additional alternatives which are presently being discussed and exist. One is the use of the structural protein L2, the minor component of the viral capsid,